Hello and welcome to MBKM Models. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe and follow for more aircraft documentaries and model build videos. This video is dedicated to the men and women who worked at the Bristol Aeroplane Company at Filton in Bristol, later British Aerospace and Rolls-Royce Bristol Engine Division, where I did my apprenticeship as a sheet metal fitter, some of whom lost their lives when a packed air raid shelter was hit by the Luftwaffe during a daylight raid. Lest we forget, the Bristol Blenheim is a British light bomber aircraft designed and built by the Bristol Aeroplane Company at Filton in Bristol, which was used extensively in the first 2 years of the Second World War, with examples still being used as trainers until the end of the war. Development began with the Type 142, a civil airliner, in response to a challenge from Lord Rothermere to produce the fastest commercial aircraft in Europe. The Type 142 first flew in April 1935, and the Air Ministry, impressed by its performance, ordered a modified design as the Type 142M for the Royal Air Force as a bomber. Deliveries of the newly named Blenheim to RAF squadrons commenced on the 10th of March 1937. In service, the Type 142M became the Blenheim Mark I, which would be developed into the longer Type 149, designated the Blenheim Mark IV, except in Canada, where Fairchild Canada built the Type 149 under license as the Bolingbroke. The Type 160 Bisley was also developed from the Blenheim, but was already obsolete when it entered service. In addition to operating as medium bombers, both versions were converted into heavy fighters by the addition of a gun pack with 4 Browning 303A-inch 7.7mm machine guns mounted under the fuselage. The Mark IV was also used as a maritime patrol aircraft, and both aircraft were also used as bombing and gunnery trainers once they had become obsolete as combat aircraft. The Blenheim was one of the first British aircraft with an all-metal stressed skin construction, retractable landing gear, flaps, a powered gun turret and variable pitch propellers. The Mark I was faster than most of the RAF's biplane fighters in the late 1930s, but advances soon left it vulnerable if flown in daylight. Though it proved successful as a night fighter, the Blenheim was effective as a bomber, but many were shot down. Both Blenheim types were used by foreign operators, and examples were license-built in Yugoslavia and Finland, in addition to Canada. In September 1935, an initial contract for 150 aircraft was placed. The Air Ministry had chosen to order the type directly from the drawing board, having been urgently sought as one piece of a wider and rapid expansion of the RAF. The first aircraft built of this production model, K7033, served as the only prototype on the 25th of June 1936. K7033 conducted its first flight from Filton. The service name for the aircraft became Blenheim Mark I after the famous battle during the War of the Spanish Succession. On the 10th of March 1937, production deliveries to the RAF formally started. 114 Squadron became the first squadron to receive the Blenheim. On the 13th of January 1938, the Blenheim entered service with number 30 Squadron, the first overseas squadron to receive the type in early 1939. The first Blenheims arrived in India. From July 1936 onwards, various additional orders were placed for the Blenheim Mark I, including multiple orders for the export market. By the end of 1936, 1,568 aircraft were on order. In order to meet the demand, secondary assembly lines were established at Chadderton by Avro and at Speke by Roots Securities. The aircraft was built under license by foreign countries, including Finland, who completed a total of 55 aircraft, and Yugoslavia, which completed 16 aircraft, with a further 24 in advanced stages of completion when Germany invaded Yugoslavia. Other countries also procured the Blenheim, including Romania, Greece and Turkey. By September 1939, orders for the Blenheim had risen to 2,088 aircraft. Total production of the Blenheim Mark I in England was 1,351 aircraft prior to the end of the production run. In 1939 production had been terminated in favor of more advanced variants. The Blenheim production program saw several shifts in requirements and in capacity. A modified Blenheim design, given the name Bolingbroke, was manufactured under license in Canada by Fairchild Aircraft. The Bolingbroke, which had been developed in response to Air Ministry Specification G2435 to procure a coastal reconnaissance light bomber as a replacement for the Avro Anson, had substantial improvements that would serve as the basis for improved variants of the Blenheim. Both the navigator's station and range limitations of the Blenheim Mark I had been subject to considerable criticism, prompting the development of an improved model to rectify the shortcomings. On the 24th of September 1937, an experimental Blenheim Mark I, modified with an extended forward fuselage beyond its original stepless cockpit, smooth-fronted nose enclosure, made its first flight from Filton. Blenheims continued to operate widely in many combat roles until about 1943, equipping RAF squadrons in the UK and at British bases in Aden, India, British Malaya, Singapore, and the Dutch East Indies. Many Blenheims were lost to Japanese fighters during the Malayan campaign and the battles for Singapore and Sumatra. By that point, the traditional daylight light bomber role was more effectively carried out by suitable fighter bombers, and the surviving examples were relegated to training duties. Nonetheless, the Blenheim played a role in preventing India from falling and in recapturing Burma, destroying over 60 aircraft on the ground in raids on Bangkok early in the campaign. One Blenheim pilot, squadron leader Arthur Scarfe, was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross for an attack on Singora, Thailand, on the 9th of December 1941. Another bomber of No. 60 Squadron RAF was credited with shooting down Lieutenant Colonel Tato K2's Nakajima Ki-43 fighter and badly damaging two others in a single engagement on the 22nd of May 1942, over the Bay of Bengal. Kato's death was a severe blow to the Imperial Japanese Army Air Force. The Air Ministry's replacement for the Blenheim as a daylight bomber, another Bristol design, the Buckingham, was overtaken by events and changes in requirements, and considered inferior to the de Havilland and Mosquito, and as such did not see combat. The final ground attack version, the Blenheim Mark V, first equipped 139 Squadron in June 1942. Eventually 13 squadrons mainly in the Middle East and Far East received this variant but operated them generally only for a few months. On the 9th of April 1942, 9 Blenheims from 11 Squadron RAF attacked Admiral Chuichi Nagumo's Kido Butai, the Imperial Japanese main carrier battle group. The Blenheims approached undetected by the A6M20 Combat Air Patrol CAP fighters, resulting in a total surprise attack upon the Japanese carrier battle group, while the bombers were able to drop bombs on fleet carrier Akagi from an altitude of 11,000 feet 3,353 meters, they fell off target without scoring any hits. 4 of the Blenheims were shot down over the carriers by CAP-Zeros, 2 of which were claimed by ace fighter pilot Kane Harada from the Sorioa, and by other Japanese aircraft returning from the earlier strike on HMS Hermes. This was the first time a Japanese carrier force had faced a concerted air attack in the Pacific War. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and until next time.